This is the story of how one of the most respected names in automotive history quietly dismantled its own reputation, one cost-cut corner at a time, and hoped you wouldn't notice. Mercedes-Benz, the three-pointed star. For decades, that badge meant something. It meant over-engineered German precision. It meant a car built to last 20 years without breaking a sweat. It meant that when you sat behind the wheel, you were sitting inside the product of a company that refused to compromise. But somewhere between the 1980s and right now, that philosophy didn't just evolve. It was gutted. And the thing is, Mercedes never really announced it. There was no press conference, no CEO standing at a podium saying, "We've decided to make our cars cheaper." Instead, it happened gradually. A different grade of plastic here, a Renault Shaw engine there, a factory moved from Germany to Hungary, where labor costs are 70% lower. And if you weren't paying close attention, you might have missed the whole thing. But the numbers don't lie, and neither do the rattling dashboards. Let's go back to when this story really begins. The 1980s. If you talk to any old-school Mercedes enthusiast, their eyes glaze over when they describe this era. Mercedes-Benz was building cars with what many people describe as a cost, no object mentality. The W124 E-Class, the W126 S-Class. These were machines engineered to survive anything, rust-proofing that would outlast the owner. Seats upholstered in leather so thick you could resole boots with it. Doors that closed with the kind of satisfying thunk that engineers spent months perfecting. Mercedes didn't just build luxury cars, they built monuments to durability. And then Lexus showed up. In 1989, Toyota launched the LS 400, and it sent a shockwave through the German luxury establishment. Here was a Japanese sedan that rode quieter, cost less, and came with a reliability record that made Mercedes look careless. For the first time in a long time, Mercedes-Benz was genuinely threatened. And instead of doubling down on what made them great, they panicked. They looked at the bottom line. They started cutting. By the mid-1990s, the cracks were already showing. Materials were cheapened. Quality control slipped. There were bizarre issues that would have been unthinkable a decade earlier. The ML320, their first real SUV, had a problem where the seat dye would literally transfer onto the clothes of the people sitting in them. Think about that for a second. A $60,000 luxury vehicle was staining your pants. The golden reputation Mercedes had spent decades building started to tarnish, and it happened fast. Then came the merger that made everything worse. On May 7, 1998, Daimler-Benz and Chrysler Corporation signed one of the biggest corporate mergers in automotive history. It was billed as a merger of equals. It was anything but. The purchase of Chrysler by Daimler-Benz marked the biggest acquisition of a U.S. company by a foreign buyer in history at that time. And for the next 9 years, it was a disaster. Now, a lot of people will tell you that parts sharing with Chrysler is what destroyed Mercedes' quality during this period. That's a convenient narrative, but former Mercedes executives have pushed back on it. According to internal sources, it had nothing to do with Chrysler. It was Mercedes' own mistakes and quality assurance problems that led to the decline. In fact, some have argued it was the reverse, that Mercedes sucked all the resources they could out of Chrysler to try and save themselves. Either way, by the time Daimler Chrysler sold its majority stake in Chrysler to Cerberus Capital in 2007, the damage was done. Mercedes had spent nearly a decade building cars that didn't live up to the badge on the hood. You'd think that experience would have taught them something, that the company would have looked at that period and said, never again. And for a while it seemed like they had. The cars got better, the interiors improved, the engineering tightened up. But here's the thing about corporate memory. It's short. And when the pressure comes back, so do the old habits. Which brings us to 2013 and a car called the CLA. The Mercedes-Benz CLA was, in many ways, a watershed moment for the brand in North America. It was the company's first front-wheel drive vehicle offered in the American market. Let that sink in. Mercedes-Benz, a company built on rear-wheel drive engineering excellence, put a front-wheel drive sedan in American showrooms and slapped a three-pointed star on the grille. And they didn't just dip their toe in the water, they cannonballed. Global cumulative CLA sales hit 100,000 units during its first year. Mercedes themselves called it their best launch in 20 years. But what were buyers actually getting? Consumer Reports rated the original CLA as, and I'm quoting here, 140% worse than the average car in their 2014 annual auto reliability survey. 140% worse than average. That's not just below the bar, that's digging a tunnel under it. Digital Trends described the interior as emphasizing that this is an entry-level model with tinny plastics and half-hearted details, noting that the door-mounted seat adjustment controls looked like another automaker's attempt to cheaply copy the signature Mercedes feature. Except it wasn't another automaker. It was Mercedes copying itself. Badly. And this is where the real philosophical shift happened. See, in Europe, nobody was particularly shocked by any of this. Mercedes and BMW have never been pure luxury brands on the other side of the Atlantic. In Germany, you can buy a Mercedes C-Class with a 1.6-liter four-cylinder engine made by Renault. Driving a Mercedes in Germany is nothing special. It's like driving a Buick in Michigan. But in North America, that badge carries weight. It carries expectations, and Mercedes knew that. They were banking on the fact that American buyers would see the star on the hood and not look too closely at what was underneath it. For a while it worked, but the financials tell a different story now. The year 2024 was brutal for Mercedes-Benz. The company posted a net profit of 10.41 billion euros, which sounds impressive until you realize that's a fall of 28.4% compared to the previous year. Overall sales dropped 4.5%. The cars division specifically experienced a 40% decline in earnings, and 2025 was even worse. Operating profits plunged 57%, turnover fell 9%. Profit was essentially cut in half, dropping from 10.4 billion euros to 5.3 billion. And in the second quarter of 2025 alone, EBIT plummeted 68% from 4.04 billion to just 1.27 billion euros. A lot of this has to do with China, where Mercedes sales dropped 19%. But China isn't the whole story. The whole story is that Mercedes is getting squeezed from every direction. Chinese competitors like BYD and NIO are building legitimately impressive vehicles for less money. Traditional rivals like BMW and Audi are fighting for every sale, and the brand's own reliability reputation has become a liability. In Consumer Reports' latest reliability rankings, Mercedes-Benz sits in 29th position out of 30 brands, 29th, ahead of only Chrysler. And as Consumer Reports puts it, every single Mercedes model is predicted to be below or well below average in long-term reliability. Every single one. So what does Mercedes do when its back is against the wall and profits are evaporating? The same thing it did in the 90s. It cuts costs. The company has launched a program called Next Level Performance. And yes, That name is absolutely designed to make cost-cutting sound aspirational. Under this initiative, Mercedes has already saved roughly $4.12 billion, and it's targeting about 5 billion euros, or $5.89 billion, in total savings by 2027. The brand is working on cutting production costs by up to 10% through the use of cheaper materials, cheaper labor, and streamlined assembly. The centerpiece of this strategy is the expansion of manufacturing in Hungary. Mercedes is moving A-class production from its Rastatt plant in Germany to its facility in Kecskemet, Hungary, about 100 kilometers outside Budapest. The numbers explain why. An hour of labor in Hungary costs roughly 13 euros. In Germany, depending on the activity, that same hour costs between 40 and 52 euros. That's not a marginal difference. That's a 70% reduction in manufacturing costs. Mercedes isn't just shifting a few models either. The Kecskemet plant is being expanded massively, with investments exceeding 1 billion euros. New buildings for body construction, assembly, and a battery assembly plant are all part of the plan. Production capacity at the facility will double from 150,000 to 300,000 vehicles per year. About 3,000 new employees will join the existing 4,500. When it's all said and done, the Hungarian plant will handle 30% of Mercedes' entire European production, up from just 15%. Chief Executive Officer Ola Kalinius framed it diplomatically. In an increasingly uncertain world, we are taking steps to make the company leaner, faster, and stronger. What he didn't say is that at least 20,000 German workers could lose their jobs as a result. And the cost-cutting doesn't stop at manufacturing. Mercedes has found an entirely new revenue stream that has nothing to do with building better cars. Subscriptions. The company now charges customers ongoing fees to unlock features that are already physically built into their vehicles. For the EQE 350 4MATIC, Mercedes charges $60 a month, $600 a year, or a one-time fee of $1,950 to unlock an additional 60 horsepower. The hardware is already there. The motor can already produce that power. You just have to pay extra to access it. Mercedes sparked controversy back in 2021 when it introduced a subscription for the advanced rear-wheel steering system on the EQS, and the subscription model has been enormously profitable. Last year, Mercedes raked in $1 billion from subscriptions alone. $1 billion. That number is only going to grow. Chief Software Officer Magnus Osberg insists Mercedes is offering a luxury and holistic experience without nickeling and diming customers. But when you're charging people a monthly fee to use capabilities their car already has, that's the definition of nickel and diming, and consumers know it. A Cox Automotive study found that 75% of respondents believe features on demand exist solely to let automakers make more money. 69% said they would shop elsewhere if a brand locked features behind subscriptions. Kelley Blue Book summed it up best. Shoppers hate the idea. Only 25% of drivers are open to it. But if most automakers shift to it, that may not matter. Meanwhile, the quality complaints keep piling up. Mercedes vehicles now have 236 documented known issues across 32 models, with 91 of those rated critical. The A-Class alone has 9 documented issues. The CLA, spanning model years 2018 through 2026, holds an average reliability score of just 48 out of 100, with persistent problems in the electrical system, engine, and panoramic sunroof. Even the S-Class, Mercedes' flagship, the car that's supposed to represent the absolute pinnacle of the brand isn't immune. Owners report interiors that rattle and creak after just 1 year of ownership. One S-Class owner wrote online, "The fit and finish and cheap interior plastics are starting to bother me." Another said the rattling was disappointing considering my Audis and BMWs remained rock solid in that department. When your $100,000 flagship is being unfavorably compared to the competition by its own owners, you have a serious problem. And yet, Mercedes keeps pushing forward. The company is launching 40 new models between 2025 and 2027. The new 2026 CLA class, which serves as the brand's entry-level model in the United States, is arriving as both an electric vehicle and a hybrid. It actually won the 2026 European Car of the Year award, only the second Mercedes to ever take that honor. On paper, things look promising. But here's where it gets complicated. Critics argue that Mercedes has become a fashion brand as much as an actual car company, that the focus is on making vehicles as flashy, ostentatious, and aggressively tech-forward as possible to appeal to a younger, new money crowd that has no reference point for what a truly well-built luxury car actually is. And that criticism has teeth, because when you compare a 1988 W124 to a 2025 A-Class, one was built to last a lifetime, and the other was built to last a lease term. One owner put it more bluntly, comparing the situation to Boeing's well-documented decline. Is it a direct result of conscious, deliberate decisions made at the highest level that are affecting the design and manufacturing of the cars themselves? I personally believe it is. That's the question at the heart of all of this. Is Mercedes' decline the result of market forces beyond its control? Or is it the predictable outcome of a company that keeps choosing short-term profits over long-term quality? Because we've seen this movie before. We saw it in the 90s. We saw it during the Daimler-Chrysler era. And each time, Mercedes eventually came back. But each time, the comeback was a little less complete. The baseline of what constitutes acceptable Mercedes quality dropped a little further. And now we're in a cycle where the brand sits 29th out of 30 in reliability, is moving production to low-cost countries, charging subscriptions for horsepower, and watching profits collapse despite all of it. Mercedes-Benz didn't hold a press conference to announce they were making cheaper cars. They didn't need to. They just quietly swapped the materials, moved the factories, locked features behind paywalls, and kept polishing the badge. The three-pointed star still shines. But what it stands for has fundamentally changed. And the only question left is whether enough buyers will notice before the next cost-cutting cycle begins. Because if history is any guide, it always does.